My best friend always said she wanted to be like me. I thought it was a compliment, until she started dating my boyfriend, wearing my clothes and pretending to be me in front of our friends. Yes, Amy was always an actress, but none of us expected just how far she'd go to take over my life. Well, if this is a game, she picked the wrong opponent. All right, let's get acquainted. My name's Kate, I'm 25. I live in Los Angeles, working from sunrise to sunset, just like any normal person. I'm dating Zach, he's 27, and this guy always seemed a little too good to be true. But you know, when you meet the one, everything feels just perfect. Evening walks, wild weekend trips, and endless "you're my universe" moments. Seriously, I thought I was living in a romantic comedy, with every night ending in a cute little happy ending. Everything was simply amazing until one small, but seriously irritating detail started to emerge. My best friend, Amy. Yes, the same Amy I share everything with, from my first kisses to my weirdest childhood nightmares. We've been close since the sandbox days. We know everything about each other. So when Amy started hanging out at our place way too often and laughing at every word Zach said, I didn't get suspicious right away. After all, it's Amy. You trust her as much as you trust yourself. But one evening, I got home from work early, thanks for the unexpected day off, boss, and walked in on this charming scene. Amy and Zach sitting on the couch, deep in conversation. And I'm not talking about some innocent "how was your day" chit-chat. They were laughing so hard they didn't even notice me coming in. Then, of course, the awkward silence. It felt like I'd walked in on something embarrassing. Amy quickly sat up, pulling her legs off the couch as if I'd caught her in the middle of something absurd. And Zach, well, he practically sank into the cushions like a startled kitten. At that moment, I had this wild urge to ask, "So, what's the joke, guys?" But I just froze and decided to watch this little show from a distance. That's when the doubts started creeping in. It's funny, but for the first time, I felt like something was definitely off between the three of us. You know, that uneasy look from Amy and the way Zach held her hand just a little too long. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. But things started spiraling when Amy, with her eyes gleaming, suggested, "Why don't we all go on a weekend trip together?" Like we were some kind of three musketeers who just had to be together everywhere all the time. But what really bugged me was that before this, she had never been all that eager to hang out with us 24/7. And now it felt like this weekend invitation wasn't just a friendly gesture. She kept giving Zach these suggestive looks, and he seemed to be accidentally listening to her a little too intently. I felt a bit awkward and laughed it off, but inside I was thinking, "Dear Amy, don't play innocent. I'm not that naive." After that weekend, things turned into a circus. Amy suddenly started insisting on these friendly outings with Zach so often that I just couldn't ignore it anymore. "Kate, I have this idea for a little picnic, but, well, you're working, right?" That was her typical excuse. And Zach, of course, was acting weird too. When I asked him about these meetups with Amy, he'd dodge the question, which just made me angrier. I mean, seriously, do I have "gullible" written on my forehead? I decided to talk to Amy, hoping for some sort of explanation, though deep down I knew it would be useless. So one evening, I gathered all my confidence and asked her directly, not holding back any sarcasm. "So, Amy, I'm a bit confused here. Since when do you spend more time with Zach than with me?" She giggled, brushed it off, and said, "Oh, come on, Kay, are you jealous? We're just having fun." Classic. Play it off as if nothing's wrong. Jealous? Really? Like I'm supposed to buy that. But the worst moment came when I accidentally looked at his phone. Yes, I know it's not the best idea, but come on. When you feel like a stranger in your own home for a whole week, desperate measures are called for. And what do I see? Texts with Amy. Innocent at first glance, but every emoji, every LOL, every supposedly accidental touch looked like a conspiracy against me. I closed the phone, trying to keep my cool, even though inside everything was screaming. So my instincts didn't fail me. You know that weird feeling everyone gets? That if your boyfriend says he's staying at a friend's, he's probably staying anywhere but there? That night, Zach gave me the classic line. Something like, "I'm not coming back tonight. Thomas needs my help." But damn it, I couldn't just take his word for it anymore. Something inside me was screaming, "Kate, grab your phone. Go check it out for yourself." The whole way there, I was convincing myself that this was just a quick check, that everything would be fine. And maybe I was just overreacting. But you know that feeling when you're not really expecting a happy ending? And sure enough, when I saw his car stop in front of Amy's house, something inside me shattered. I could almost hear my hope breaking into pieces. Zach got out of the car and I nearly choked on my own anger when I saw Amy running out to meet him. Saying my legs gave out is an understatement. And yes, they hugged like it was the most normal thing in the world, as if they weren't breaking every unspoken rule. I just stood there in the shadows, like a lost observer, wondering how I was still managing to keep my cool. Everything in me was screaming, "Go over there and say everything you're thinking." But I held back. You know that feeling when you're so furious you don't yell because if you do, you know you'll explode? My plan was simple. Stay in the shadows, watch, analyze, and don't jump to conclusions. But I quickly realized that keeping calm was the hardest part. I saw them smiling at each other like I didn't even exist, like I was just invisible. And honestly, it hurt more than I could have imagined. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. A revenge scenario played in my head like the trailer for a new movie. All right, if I've been cast as the betrayed heroine, why not turn this into a drama where I hold all the cards? I decide not to let on that I know about their little affair just yet. My new tactic? Smiles and friendliness. Now, I'm the very picture of calm, the sweet friend, the trusting girlfriend who suspects absolutely nothing. I act like everything's normal and avoid words like betrayal and serious talk. Every time I see Zach or Amy, I run a mental script. Pretend nothing happened. Every conversation I have with Amy now is like a mini performance. I ask her about random stuff like, "Where'd you get that cute dress?" or "Got any weekend plans?" acting as though I haven't noticed her strange attachment to Zach. Once I even joked, "You and Zach are like BFFs these days, huh?" She laughed, brushed it off like I'd complimented her taste in handbags, as if it was nothing. I'm practically invisible in their world. And Zach, of course, has no idea. He's all smiles, and I'm actually starting to enjoy this game where neither he nor Amy suspects I've got dirt on them. But the longer I play this comedy, the more I notice just how much Amy, damn it, is copying me. At first, I thought, coincidence? I don't think so. She suddenly started wearing clothes like mine, using the same expressions, even doing her hair the way I do. One night at a party, she showed up in an outfit almost identical to mine, and I just stood there feeling like I was staring into a twisted mirror. She noticed me looking and said, "We're like twins, right?" Oh, if only you knew what I was thinking, friend. Now I realize it's not just jealousy, it's fear. And so the moment comes when Amy decides to go big. Everything she'd done before, copying me, flirting with Zach, was apparently just a warm-up. Now she's gone full snake mode. She's got a new plan. Set me up in front of Zach and our friends so they'd all think I'd just lost my mind. It started with little things, tiny annoyances that, when piled up, can drive you insane. Amy started spreading rumors about me being jealous, paranoid, distrustful of Zach. I'd always been sure my friends were on my side. But suddenly, at every party or gathering, someone would come up to me and ask, "Hey, Kate, is it true you yelled at Amy the other day for picking the same restaurant as you?" Or, "Listen, Zach said you're getting too controlling." You know the drill. Classic play. Turn me into the jealous, hysterical girlfriend. Amy was practically a pro at twisting things, making it look like I was on the verge of a breakdown. And Zach? Not only did he believe the whole circus, but he started keeping his distance from me. Honestly, the whole thing makes me feel sick. Once I tried to tell Zach how I felt, that it seemed like Amy was literally pushing me out. And you know what he said? "Maybe you're overthinking it, Kate. Amy would never do that to you. She's your best friend." Oh, of course she's my best friend, all right. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, Amy staged another scene. She pretended that I'd made her cry right in front of everyone, claiming I'd shouted at her when I hadn't even raised my voice. Her tears, her trembling voice. It was all so rehearsed, I could almost see her catching every reaction from our friends. Everyone was shocked, and I just stood there as if someone had dumped ice water over me, not knowing what to say. Defend myself? Useless. She'd put me in a situation where I looked like the ultimate fool. Day by day, I lost friends, and Zach fell deeper under her influence. She was pushing me out of my own life, like her goal wasn't just to steal my boyfriend, but to squeeze every single piece of me out of existence. Things hit their peak at a party. All our mutual friends were there, and even Zach showed up, though he looked like he was there just for appearances. As usual, Amy was the center of attention, shining her fake smile and acting like the main star. I had a feeling something was going to go wrong tonight, and sure enough, my intuition was right. Amy decided to put on a show. In the middle of a conversation, she paused, then, casually, mentioned how she'd accidentally seen me at some cafe with some guy. She said it with this innocent smile, but with just the right hint, as if to say, "See? Kate isn't exactly trustworthy." My jaw just dropped. Incredible. Now I was supposedly cheating on Zach, even though I hadn't even had time to watch a show alone, let alone have a side thing. All eyes were on me, and something in me snapped. I couldn't just stand by and watch her manipulate everyone anymore. "Right there," I said. "You know what, guys? Enough is enough." I turned to Zach and said, "Don't you think it's strange how much time Amy spends with you? Do you really not see that she's been doing everything she can to destroy our relationship behind my back?" Then, it all poured out. I laid it all bare. How she'd been imitating me, the times I'd caught them together, every glance, every word. "She wants to be me, Zach. She wants my life. She wants you, and she wants me erased. This isn't friendship. It's a plan to take over my life." Amazingly, instead of hearing me out, Zach looked at me like I was, excuse me, crazy. And there she was, the queen of manipulation, doing what she does best. Amy grabbed my hand and, in a soft, pitying tone, said, "Kate, I had no idea you felt this way about me. I thought we were friends. I'm sorry you see things so distorted. This is all jealousy, right?" She turned it all back on me, painting me as the jealous, unhinged one. And what did Zach do? That's right. He believed her. I had no choice but to leave that party. My friends all looked at me like I was out of my mind, and I realized I was alone. After the party, where I basically lost everyone, including Zach, one thought was left in my mind. "You want to play dirty, Amy? Fine, let's play." Everything that had happened only fueled my resolve to take my life back. I knew that if I just backed down, she'd erase me from my own existence. So I decided. It was time to gather evidence, to expose her game and turn the tables. From that moment, I started acting like a spy, quietly, without making a scene. You know what they say? Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. I stayed friendly with Amy as if there wasn't even a hint of conflict between us. But behind her back, I started digging, looking for any leads. And then, I got lucky. I accidentally found her old journal. Yes, her journal, hidden under her bed, because who hides anything under their bed if they want to keep it safe? I opened it and, let's just say the contents were pure gold. Page after page were her thoughts, feelings, and it all sounded like some cheap thriller where she's the star of the show, slowly but surely turning into me. She literally wrote about how she started copying my style, my mannerisms, my expressions. Seriously? I want to be her. That's one of her entries, and it was the last thing I ever wanted to see. There were parts of her writing that sent chills down my spine. Amy didn't just want to take my place. She wanted to become me, so that everyone would forget there ever was a real Kate. With every word I read, my fear turned into anger. I saw her for what she really was: a manipulator, a fraud, a liar. And now, I had proof. But I wasn't going to just throw it out there and hope the truth would somehow change everything. No, I had a different plan. I wanted her to expose herself, for everyone to see her true face, and for her own actions to be her undoing. So I acted even calmer, even friendlier, letting her think she'd won. Let her think I'd given up. And so, the moment of truth arrived. At a party where all our friends were gathered, I showed up with the perfect plan in place. Tonight, everyone would see the real Amy. Yes, I'd played it cool and quiet for the past few weeks, but now it was time for the real show, and everyone was in their seats. I quietly went over to Zach and handed him the journal. Without showing any anger, just calmly handed it to him with a smile and said, "Maybe you should read this." Zach, of course, was clueless but started flipping through it. At first, he looked puzzled, but the further he read, the wider his eyes grew. His face, that shock and horror, was exactly what I'd hoped for. He slowly looked up at Amy, and I could feel the room going dead silent, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the next move. This was it, the moment her mask cracked. Amy noticed the way Zach and our friends were looking at her, with confusion and even disgust, and she started to defend herself. "It's not what you think, guys. This is all just a misunderstanding." She tried to act like everything was fine, but her voice was shaking, and I could see the fear spreading across her face. I stood to the side, watching as she tried to wiggle her way out, but no one was buying it. She lost her grip and began sputtering out ridiculous excuses. I just wanted to be close to you guys. Kate, you know we're friends, right?" Everyone stood there, watching her in silence, like she was an uninvited guest at the party. Zach came up to me and whispered, Is this all true?" I just nodded, and in that moment, he looked like his whole world had shattered. Amy clung to the last shreds of hope, but it was clear. She'd lost. One by one, our friends started walking away from her, leaving her alone with the reality that her fake little game was now out in the open. As Amy walked out, I felt both relieved and strangely empty. Yes, I'd taken back control of my life, gotten rid of the toxic friend and restored justice, but the whole experience had left its mark. It's like I'd lost a piece of myself, the part that used to trust people completely. My best friend knew everything, my secrets, fears, and weaknesses, and at some point, she decided she didn't just want to be by my side. She wanted my life. It started with harmless coincidences and ended in a nightmare I never saw coming. And now I have only one question: how far am I willing to go to get my life back? All right, let me introduce myself. I'm Jessica, 24 years old, and until recently, I thought my life was pretty predictable and stable. My boyfriend Tom, he's the epitome of reliability, always there for me, never forgets the little things, and well, I could always count on him. And my best friend Kristen? She's the spark, the energy, and the fun, all wrapped into one. She's the one who can lift my spirits at any moment and who knows me better than I know myself. But recently, something changed. My little world started to crack at the seams, all because of one night when Tom said he was going out for drinks with the guys. Sure, I thought, go ahead, have fun. I grabbed a couple of friends myself and figured a night out at the bar wouldn't hurt me either. And what do I see? There, at one of the tables, are Tom and Kristen, laughing and hugging, like they're 17 years old and just discovering first love. They didn't see me, but I sure saw them. I stood off to the side, like I'd entered some alternate reality where they're the main characters in some cheap romance, and I'm just an onlooker. In my mind, all the red flags I'd ignored started flashing. The odd little arguments they'd had, the look in Tom's eyes that used to be just for me, and of course, that laughter. I might have understood if it had been a random encounter, but these two were clearly in their own world. They looked at each other as if I didn't even exist. When I saw Kristen put her hand on his shoulder, leaning in close enough that I could almost hear her whispering something to him, I wanted to walk over and say, "What the hell, guys?" But instead, I stood there, almost hypnotized, unable to believe it was really happening. And you know the worst part? I started to feel this awful feeling creeping in that wouldn't go away. My brain was screaming that this was all just friendship, but my inner voice was whispering, "Seriously, Jessica? Do you really believe that fairy tale?" After that night, I just couldn't get the image of them together out of my head. I mean, when you walk into a bar and catch your boyfriend and best friend looking like a scene from a cheap romance movie, the concept of trust starts to evaporate. Every time I saw them together, it felt like they were playing some ridiculous game, and I was the only one who didn't know the rules. And that's when the real surprises started. Kristen suddenly decided to become, well, me. Obsessed with inspiration, she started wearing similar outfits. A backless dress like mine? Done. A new short haircut just like mine? Absolutely. At first, I thought it was some strange coincidence, but with every encounter, she looked more and more like my personal clone. And when she even started repeating my phrases, that's when I really started to wonder. And you know what's funny? Every time I asked Tom where he'd been, he'd give me the usual report. Hanging out with friends. But Kristen's name kept popping up. At first, it was little things like, "Kristen told me this funny story yesterday," or "Kristen suggested a cool place for lunch." But one day, he actually said, "You know, Kristen recommended this new Thai restaurant. Do you mind if I go with her tomorrow?" Excuse me? Go with Kristen? That sounds an awful lot like a date, doesn't it? And to really drive me insane, I accidentally saw their text messages. Seeing your boyfriend and best friend exchanging emojis, LOLs, and inside jokes you don't understand leaves a nasty taste. It seemed like a normal conversation, but each emoji felt like some secret code, like they were hiding something from me. I wanted to ask questions, but I figured causing a scene wouldn't be the smartest move. So I stood there, not knowing what to do, but feeling like something inside me was slowly but surely falling apart. Then, one day, Tom tells me he's going to spend the night at his friend Jake's place. No big deal, right? Well, let's just say that if I hadn't already been full of doubts, I would have thought so too. But that night, my inner detective went into full gear. Tom's lie seemed so transparent that I felt like testing it. I grabbed my car keys, threw on a jacket, and followed him, keeping a distance like in some thriller movie. It might have been fun if I hadn't felt like the lead in a bad betrayal film. Stalking my own boyfriend? New low. But as it turned out, I'd landed myself right in the middle of things. Instead of going to Jake's, Tom drove to Kristen's. The moment I saw him park outside her house, my stomach turned upside down. He got out of the car, and there was Kristen waiting for him at the door, with that sweet little smile. And what do? They hug. Oh, of course, because it's totally normal to hug your girlfriend's best friend on her doorstep, right? Just like in the movies, except this movie, let's say, doesn't end happily for me. I stood there in the shadows, holding my breath, watching them disappear inside. They didn't even think to look around, didn't notice a thing. Probably thought the world revolved around their sweet little meetings. My heart was racing, My palms were sweaty, and my mind was paralyzed. You know that feeling when you see something you really don't want to, but you can't look away? That was this moment. I drove home, but sleep was out of the question. I lay there in the dark, feeling anger and betrayal twisting into something unbearable. All right, I made a decision. No drama, no hysteria, just cold calculation and a careful game. From that moment, I became the perfect actress, projecting absolute happiness and complete trust. If Kristen thought she could fool me, I'd show her what a real performance looked like. Every time we saw each other, I'd smile at Kristen like nothing had happened. We'd chat as usual, and I'd look her in the eye with the most innocent expression, as if all her friendly behavior with Tom were just cute little things. And you know what? She bought it. It apparently never crossed her mind that I might have figured things out. Tom, too, acted like nothing was amiss, confident that his sweet girlfriend didn't suspect a thing about his little secrets. But the more I watched them, the clearer it became. Kristen didn't just want my boyfriend. Her goal was much stranger and creepier. She seemed determined to become me. You know how people sometimes copy little things, like jokes or fashion choices? Well, she took it to a whole new level. Kristen started buying clothes like mine, changing her hairstyle to look like mine, and even her way of speaking began to mimic mine. At first, it was weird, then disturbing, and then I started feeling like I was being replaced. Every little thing she did convinced me that she was simply obsessed. At first, I thought it was jealousy, but now I saw she didn't just want to take Tom. She wanted to become me. If I thought Kristen was just enjoying playing my role, I was way off. This girl started going all out. It was like she'd decided to destroy my life piece by piece, doing it so subtly that no one, including me, would immediately realize what was happening. Kristen began spreading rumors that I'd become insanely jealous and paranoid. And the worst part was, these rumors gradually started working. Friends began looking at me with this slight hint of pity, and I could practically see their thoughts. Poor Jessica. She's lost her mind over jealousy about Tom. Bingo, Kristen. Now I'm the crazy, jealous girl who can't control her emotions. At one point, I started to feel like even Tom was buying into it. Our conversations always seemed to end with his gentle hints that I was overthinking things, or maybe taking everything too personally. Then he went even further and said, "Maybe you should talk to someone about this. You know, friends are always there to help." Oh, sure, Tom. The friends who'd gladly help me cope with your own betrayal, right? To finish me off, my friends, those same friends who used to always be there for me, actually asked me if I was okay. It was like a knife to the heart. They stood there with such concerned faces, like I was the tragic lead in some soap opera. Kristen had succeeded. She was pushing me out of my own life. And then the moment of truth arrived. At a party where all our friends were gathered, Kristen seized her chance to deal the final blow. She approached everyone with the air of someone about to share the juiciest gossip of the season, and she launched into yet another act. "Did you guys know Jessica's actually been stalking me and Tom? I think it's gone beyond jealousy to something seriously unhealthy." Her voice was a mixture of fake sympathy and smugness, as if she were some poor victim of my supposed craziness. The friends' reactions? They stared at me with complete shock. "Seriously, Jessica?" someone muttered. "Are you really following them? That's a bit much." Yep. Now I looked like a full-on lunatic, and Kristen seemed to be enjoying every second of this performance. But at that moment, something clicked inside me. I was tired of pretending, tired of acting like I didn't see her tearing my life apart. I took a deep breath, gathered my courage, and walked straight over to Tom. The whole room went silent. "You know what, Tom? I've seen everything. I saw you going over to her place at night, saw you two hugging, and saw how she's been copying me, trying to take over every aspect of my life." His face? Pure shock. Everyone around us? Frozen, not understanding what was happening. But Kristen didn't miss a beat. She immediately turned the situation to her advantage. "Oh my God, Jessica, is that really how you see things? I'm sorry, but maybe you really should talk to someone about your feelings. Nobody wants you to suffer like this." And what does Tom do? Instead of even trying to understand, he just sighs and says, "Jessica, you're just making this harder on yourself." My attempt to expose the truth backfired. Now everyone was looking at me like I was a paranoid wreck. When the whole world thinks you're crazy, and your so-called best friend is a sweet little angel who's just concerned about your mental health, it's hard not to want to take drastic action. I realized that words weren't enough anymore. I needed proof that Kristen was no friend but a master manipulator. And believe me, I was ready to do whatever it took to get it. From that moment on, I turned into a full-blown detective. I watched Kristen with double the vigilance, trying to catch every little detail. In any other situation, going through her desk, rifling through her bag, or searching her things would have been unthinkable. But here, I was willing to do anything for the truth. Then, one evening, when she left her bag unattended at a party, I made my move. I found her apartment keys. Yeah, not without some risk. And while everyone else was having fun, I slipped out and headed to her place. Sounds crazy, but when your life becomes a thriller, you become its main character. And what did I find there? Her old journal, hidden away like it was some top-secret treasure. My hands were practically shaking as I opened it to the first page. And there it was. Her whole twisted plan laid bare. Page after page filled with fantasies about becoming me, about reuniting with Tom, and making everyone's life better and happier without my paranoia. Honestly, it was terrifying. I felt chills run down my spine as I read her entries. Every word, every phrase, only fueled my resolve to make a final stand. Now I had evidence, and a plan was forming in my mind like a storm on the horizon. At the next party, I was ready for the showdown. I had the soundtrack in my head, like in an action movie when the hero is about to strike the final blow. This gathering was the perfect stage, as all our mutual friends, including Tom, were there. I felt it. This was my moment to finally show everyone who the real Kristen was. As soon as everyone was deep in their conversations and music, I approached Tom and, with the sweetest smile, handed him Kristen's journal like it was just some random little notebook. "Read it when you get a chance," I said casually. "I think you'll find it interesting." Tom, initially puzzled, started flipping through it, and soon our friends began gathering around him, reading over his shoulder. One by one, they leaned in, reading Kristen's confessions about her plan to replace me, how she'd been meticulously copying me, right down to every little gesture so she could eventually perfectly slip into my life. My theory that she wanted to become me no longer sounded like the paranoid delusion of a jealous girlfriend. It was a chilling, disturbing reality. Kristen, realizing what was happening, tried to jump in, rushing to Tom and putting on her most innocent face. "Guys, this isn't true. You know how much I love Jess. This is just fantasy. She totally misunderstood everything." Oh, those pathetic excuses. As if anyone was going to buy them now. But the looks on our friends' faces said it all. One by one, they started backing away from her like she was some sort of contagion. Tom stood there, looking at her with genuine horror in his eyes. She tried stammering something, but the more she talked, the worse it got. "Jessica, you don't understand. I just wanted to be close. You know how much you mean to me," she pleaded, but it was useless. No one believed her sweet words anymore. All her masks fell away, and there was Kristen, exposed, uncovered, and completely alone. Friends started drifting away from her. Tom turned his back, and I stood there watching as she tried to salvage the last scraps of her reputation. I felt both relief and a strange heaviness. My revenge was complete, but the journey had been long and bitter. I walked out of that house finally feeling free.